Step one of performing hover deadlifts is to decide whether you are taking the barbell from the rack or from the floor. This should change the context of your mental prep before you start your reps. Step two is going to be assuming a similar deadlift position as you normally would with your traditional conventional deadlift. Now, this will look like a similar stance and grip width that you would traditionally use. Now, whether you're picking it from the floor or taking it from the rack, basically you're going to start each rep from the top. So it's like almost this pseudo RDL slash conventional deadlift. And I'll talk about why I love them later on in this video. But assume a traditional conventional deadlift setup for your reps. Now, step three is going to be the descent. This is arguably, I would say, the most important part of this exercise. But as you start to descend, as opposed to an RDL where you're going to be a lot more hingy with your hips and putting the hips backwards, you are going to replicate what your traditional conventional deadlift descent looks like when you're normally bringing that barbell down to the floor. So you are going to break at the hips and then break at the knees as that barbell starts to pass the thigh area, depending on your anatomy. This can look a little bit different for everybody. But what I want you to think about is if you were to stop the barbell, let's say 6 inches from the floor, how would you sequence that to avoid hitting your knees and to maintain a very strong positioning between your knees and your hips while maintaining a level set neutral back? Again, I would argue that the eccentric is probably the most important part of this lift. So as you acclimate to hover deadlifts, start a little bit lighter and practice the sequencing before starting to load them a little bit heavier and performing them at higher volumes. Again, when you start your descent, try to control your eccentric. So think 1, 2, 3, even 4 seconds before going back up at that hover spot that you're gonna stop at. And when you sequence, again, you're gonna think hips and then you're gonna think knees, and you're gonna flex at the same time with both of those, maintaining that really strong set position, keeping that barbell relatively over the midfoot. Now, step four is once you have hit a point in which you're gonna stop basically the barbell's momentum from going down and hitting the floor, you're gonna basically hover the floor, you're then gonna stand back up. And now as you stand back up with the weight, you're gonna think conventional deadlift mechanics. So you're gonna keep that barbell relatively close to the body and think extend through the knee, pressing into the floor with the feet, and then bringing your glutes to the bar, so extending through the hip. Once you're at the top, take a second to breathe. And then step five is going to be going into your next rep, maintaining the same form. Now, when it comes to breathing, just a few insights here. Your breathing will likely be dictated on the load you're using. If you're performing higher volume reps with lighter loads, you'll likely be breathing and bracing a little bit less. That is totally normal. And then as weight gets heavier, when you start your descent, you're going to want to brace accordingly. And then as you stand back up, that is when you'll exhale before starting your next rep. So get poised at the top, take a breath or two if you need to get yourself ready to go, and then brace for your next rep so you can maintain that strong knee, hip, and back position that you're after with your hover deadlift reps. All right, so now what are some of the benefits of hover deadlifts? Because honestly, I don't think everybody necessarily needs to perform them, but if your deadlift is stalling, or if you just want to change up your stimulus and variation, or if you just want an absolutely sick upper back and glute pump, these can be fantastic. And so benefit number one, I think they can be honestly a cheat code to progress your deadlift without physically having to go wicked heavy with your deadlift. So when we're performing hover deadlifts, we are essentially going to be doing the same deadlift mechanics that we have in the conventional deadlift. The only real difference is that during that eccentric, that is going to be the big part of this exercise where we're basically fighting gravity. So essentially all of the small muscles that help support strong concentrics when we're picking barbells up off the floor from a dead stop position, they're going to be highly active, helping us control the barbell and maintain a relatively good positioning as we descend towards the floor. The stopping before the floor is where the secret sauce is. That is where we're going to have a lot of time under tension and cause the hamstrings, glutes, back, all to work really hard to maintain good positioning. The second benefit of this variation is that I think if you struggle with your deadlift mechanics and just the sequencing between reps, these can be kind of a cheat code to help really ingrain good mechanics in your brain. By going a little bit lighter and stopping before the floor, it is going to force you to be a little bit more conscious of your barbell positioning and how you're sequencing at the knees, hips, and if you're maintaining a relatively good, strong back position, as in when you are staying over that barbell, you're not falling forward or falling back, you're maintaining a good position. Because when we're trying to just hover the floor with the barbell deadlift, we're going to need to maintain a lot more control. And what's going to force us to really pay attention to our form? Fighting gravity with weight in our hands. So if you struggle with sequencing of your deadlifts, especially during the eccentric, and you notice that you constantly push the barbell out or your knees and hips are a little bit off, try doing hover deadlifts for a week or two. Even use them for warm-ups just to kind of get that hip to knee sequencing ingrained in your brain. I think you'll be shocked to learn how useful they can be for instilling really good mechanics. The third benefit of them is that they can be, and I already kind of mentioned and alluded to this, a sick upper back stimulus and a sick stimulus on the lower body. So as opposed to an RDL that's a little bit more eccentric focused and focused on really lengthening the hamstrings, the big difference here is that we're not going to be lengthening the hamstrings to the greatest degree, but we're still going to be getting a ton of stimulus through them and for the glutes and for the back. Because we're performing reps that look more similar to conventional deadlifts, we're also getting a nice eccentric stimulus for the conventional deadlift that we don't traditionally get. Generally speaking, for most conventional deadlift reps, we'll focus on the concentric, and the eccentric is kind of an afterthought. This gives us a nice exposure to what that eccentric can do for our lifting and our general strength. Overall, they can be a fantastic exercise for building general strength, which can carry over to our other lifts. Now, just two quick mistakes I want to talk about with the hover deadlift that I'll see lifters make is number one, rushing reps or just not really controlling the eccentric entirely. Now, why this can be problematic is that when you are doing high volume hover deadlift reps, as weight gets heavier, if you're rushing, that's where things can get sloppy. This variation needs to have a bit of focus to it. This is not just an exercise you want to go do willy-nilly. So you do want to have a little bit of poise and focus with your reps to make sure you are sequencing accordingly. Do not go get lazy and hover the floor with heavy weight and get loose with your back, for example, and just get really lax with your form, because that I don't think is going to give you the stimulus that you're after. Mistake number two is breaking too soon at the knees. So this is going to be a variation that's going to force you to really be conscious of your hips and knees and what they're doing to make sure that barbell stays over that midfoot. If you're breaking too hard at the knees too fast, you're either going to send that barbell into your thighs and it's going to be wicked uncomfortable, or you're going to shoot it forward, which is then going to pull you forward. So if you feel like you're getting pulled forward, you likely might be breaking at the knees a little bit too soon. Film yourself from the side. That can be really useful to see, okay, where am I going wrong? Am I breaking too much at the knee, or is my hip kind of off with its timing? That can be a really useful cue to make sure you're maintaining that relatively over the midfoot bar position. If you've ever used hover deadlifts, let me know in the comments below why you use them and why you like them. They have been a fantastic variation that I've been playing with, and honestly, my deadlift strength has continued to go up even though I don't need to load these as heavy, and I feel like my upper back is finally growing again. I have been so stoked on my trap gains, but all I have to say, if you have additional questions on this exercise, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.